Well, thank you for joining us. My name is Kent Hovind. I was a high school science teacher for 15 years and earned my doctorate in education. I've been very concerned about education and particularly the subject of the teaching of evolution and creation in our public schools. It's my great honor in the last 10 years to be an evangelist speaking on the subject of creation and evolution and getting into many, many hundreds of public schools and sharing the most important topic of origins with the kids there in public schools. What I'd like to do in this tape is cover two subjects. Number one, we're going to talk about what can be done, what can teachers do in a public school? What does the law say? You know, what's right and what's wrong? And then secondly, the second half of this tape will be an actual presentation with me speaking to about 700 students in a public school. And many teachers will use this tape to show to their class the evidence for creation and the evidence against evolution, because I try to avoid referring to God or the Bible, though there's no reason that you can't. I just purposely don't when I go speak in public schools. I'd like to say, first of all, that most of the public school teachers that I know are sincere, dedicated, professional people. They are oftentimes very intelligent and very godly people who want to do right. My brother is a 28-year veteran teaching in public schools. My mom taught for 20 years and retired from teaching public schools. Many simply do not know that they can teach creation science. For some reason, people think that you can't talk about creation or the Bible in the public schools, and I'd like to show you what the law says and simply put that thought to rest. So what does the law say? What can we teach anyway? Well, to give you a little history, in the 1800s, when the public school system began, in the early 1800s, they used the Bible as a curriculum book. It was part of the classroom. And teachers were taught, students were taught straight from the Bible. They were taught about the Noah and the flood and the whole story of creation. There was no problem at all. As the public school system began to grow and spread around the country, people began to include the evolution teaching, particularly about the mid-1860s or 70s when Darwin's book started to become popular. Teachers began to include some of this in their curriculum. Then in the early 1920s, some states passed laws requiring schools to not teach evolution. The most famous, of course, is the Scopes monkey trial. The world's most famous court trial took place in Dayton, Tennessee in 1925. This is the actual transcript of the trial right here. What happened, Tennessee had passed a law that says you cannot teach evolution. And there's a long story about that trial, and especially about the books that have been written, or the movie that was done since then, called Inherit the Wind, which is an absolute perversion of what really happened. And I would recommend you actually read the court transcript yourself, read it word for word, and then as you watch the movie, you'll see thousands of changes that were made purposely to make the Christians and the Bible-believing people or the creationists look dumb. And that's not at all what happened there in Dayton, Tennessee that hot summer in 1925. So there's information you can get from Bryan College, which was started in honor of William Jennings Bryan, who was the man who defended the teaching of creation and the exclusion of evolution in that trial. You could read what Mr. Bryan had to say on the subject. You can get the entire court case from Bryan College, or you can get good information from George Serrell, who has written quite an expose of the errors in the video in the movie Inherit the Wind. Please do not show that to your students, or if you do, give them some equal time by showing creationist information. You certainly can do that. But in 1925, the evolutionists lost the case. They lost that day. Scopes, the teacher who claimed he taught evolution, though he didn't know if he ever did or not, Scopes was fined $100. Later, the fine was overturned on a technicality, but the case was never overturned. It remained against the law to teach evolution in many states until 1968. The last laws banning the teaching of evolution were overturned in 1968. And now it's okay to teach evolution. It's always been okay to teach creation. There's never been a law against it. There are numerous impact articles put out by the Institute for Creation Research. They put these out there 10 cents a piece, and they're up to 350 something now. So you could get all the back issues for $35. This goes through all the different things about creation, evolution, and quite a few of these impact articles deal just with the topic of teaching creation in public schools. Might be very helpful information to you to show you that you can teach creation science in your public school. Even the evolutionists admit this. It's never been against the law to teach creation. Stephen Jay Gould, raving evolutionist, said, "No statute exists in any state to bar instruction in creation science. It could be taught before, and it can be taught now." So he knows it can be taught. Evolutionary biologist Michael Zimmerman said, "The Supreme Court ruling did not in any way outlaw the teaching of creation science in public school classrooms. Quite simply, it ruled that in the form taken by the Louisiana law, it is unconstitutional to demand equal time for this particular subject. Creation science can still be brought into science classrooms if and when teachers and administrators feel that it is appropriate. Numerous surveys have shown that teachers and administrators favor just this route. And in fact, creation science is being taught in science courses throughout the country. So don't let somebody tell you you cannot talk about creation in the classroom. Yes, you certainly can. Eugenia Scott, the president of the National Center for Science Education, who I debated one time on the radio, kind of a one-sided debate. I got about 8 minutes and she got about 45 minutes. But Eugenia Scott, whose their whole organization, the National Center for Science Education, they exist to stop people from teaching creation in the classrooms. They put out pamphlets all the time, sending them to public schools every place. They're very well funded. And they say, you know, don't teach creation in the classrooms and only teach evolution in the classrooms. And there's really a lot of misinformation coming out, and teachers are just plain confused about what to do. But Eugenia Scott said, the Supreme Court decision says only that the Louisiana law violates the constitutional separation of church and state. It does not say that no one can teach scientific creation. And unfortunately, many individual teachers do. Some school districts even require equal time for creation and evolution. William Provine, quite a strong believer in the evolution theory, said, teachers and school boards in public schools are already free under the Constitution of the USA to teach about supernatural origins if they wish in their science classes. Laws can be passed in most countries of the world requiring discussion of supernatural origins in science classes and still satisfy national legal requirements. He continued and said, I have a suggestion for evolutionists. Include discussion of supernatural origins in your classes and promote discussion of them in public and other schools. Come off your high horse about having only evolution taught in science classes. The exclusionism you promote is painfully self-serving and smacks of elitism. Why are you afraid of confronting the supernatural creationism believed by the majority of persons in the USA and perhaps worldwide? Shouldn't students be encouraged to express their beliefs about origins in a class discussing origins by evolution? Well, yay, William, I think that's good. I think, yes, students should be taught both sides of this vital issue. Ultimately, there are only two options. Either there is a creator or there isn't. And it's perfectly fine to teach the kids there is a creator, or the teacher could say, I believe there is a creator. It's perfectly fine to do that. You may want to get Impact article number 196, which explains some of the laws about teaching creation science in a public school. It's always been perfectly fine. The ACLU seems to have been very instrumental in spreading some false information or misleading information, trying to let teachers think they cannot talk about creation in the classroom. I think what typically happens is the ACLU will threaten a lawsuit if some teacher teaches creation. Now, they would lose the lawsuit, but that doesn't matter. The fact that they threatened a lawsuit makes the average school board run and hide and say, well, let's not talk about the Bible or talk about creation because we can't afford to defend ourselves against this lawsuit. Even though the ACLU would lose, they will threaten the suit and sometimes even bring suit just so that the harassment factor will cause teachers to stop teaching creation. And that is most unfortunate, but happens, I'm afraid, all the time. Teachers are not allowed to convert the students or try to get the students to become a Baptist or Catholic or Buddhist or something like that, but they certainly can talk about creation in the classroom. You may want to get information from Elizabeth Ridenour, the National Council for Bible Curriculum in Public Schools from North Carolina. They've done a tremendous job on putting out information about how you can get a Bible class started in your public school. It's always been perfectly fine. You may want to get the book by Dwayne Gish, Teaching Creation Science in Public Schools, showing how that it is perfectly fine. You might want to get information from the Gablers. The Gablers in Longview, Texas have spent a lifetime, for the last 40 years, they've been putting out information on good public school textbooks. And what does the law actually say? They review all the textbooks that come out and help people select good books. For instance, the Gablers have said, states can legally require teachers to discuss evolution in science class. They cannot require them to discuss creation. Teachers may discuss creation in science classes if they wish. So what's happened is some people, I think well-meaning people, have tried to go into states' legislatures and say, I demand creation be taught. Well, the Supreme Court has consistently ruled against that. But the Supreme Court says, look, you can teach it if you want, but we cannot make anybody teach it. We cannot demand that it be taught. Courts allow states to require discussing scientific weaknesses in evolution, but not requiring discussing evidence for creation.